Hello again, rail fans, and welcome back to the CSX W&A subdivision in downtown Marietta, Georgia. On this gloomy Friday evening of March 18th, 2022, we are set up for an anticipated southbound empty military train S824, with quite the lead motor, that lead motor being a solo KCS SD70 Ace numbered 4157. I never could find out where S824 was coming from or where he was going to. Maybe he was going to New Orleans, Jacksonville, or somewhere up the East Coast. If any of you guys know this information, feel free to leave it into the comments. After S824 passed, everything went quiet for nearly 4 hours until a green signal popped up at the south end of Ackworth. But of course, it was for southbound local shuttle A703 coming out of Cartersville and heading down to Marietta to the Georgia Northeastern Railroad. And tonight, just like any other night, 703 is a short one with just 2 Jeeps and 8 cars. 703 would be the last train that we saw on this night, as he would go down to Marietta and then make a return trip, and then nothing would run for a few more hours. So we just called it quits and headed back home.
Clear. South Ackworth, CSXT 4316, south out.
And here we are again just under a month later on Saturday, April 16th, 2022, starting out in the town of Kennesaw. The town of Kennesaw is situated about 29 miles north and west of Atlanta, and in the mornings like this, the town's pretty quiet until the train arrives. The train that we were waiting on in Kennesaw was southbound manifest Q58116 coming south out of Nashville. Once he reaches Atlanta, he'll stop and work Howell Yard, and once he's finished, he'll take a northeastern turn onto the Abbeville subdivision and head north for Greenwood, South Carolina. And on the plus side, Q581 would have a good lash up on this day, the leader being an AC 4400, then a Gevo, and then an SD70 Mace and the YN3B paint scheme. we would move up the line a little bit farther north until we would be stopped at Emerson with a high green heading southbound the north end of Emerson siding, so we would pull in here for the shot for another southbound. Our second southbound would be B21014. B210 is an as-needed run of empty phosphate hoppers out of Canadian National's clearing yard in Chicago, Illinois, down to Mulberry, Florida. And on this day, B210 was mixed with Q647, so that's the reason why you'll see some mixed freight blocks in the consist. Q647 also runs out of Chicago, so CSX just decided to put the mixed freight on there, and once they reach Raycross, they'll take the mixed freight off, and then B210 will continue his trip down the Mulberry. And since B210 came off the CN, he would have some good power on this day.
CSX Equipment Defect Detector, milepost 47.4. No defects. No defects. Total axle 684. End of transmission. North end of Emerson. Yes, 4139 south. Main 2 pass, 1 full.
If you couldn't tell, what I meant by the good power was those two CNGVOs leading. And then there were the two CSXs trailing, probably for Q647. We would move up the line just a little bit farther north before being stopped again in Cartersville for another southbound. This southbound being X541, an extra of the normal Q541. He had been working at North Yard for about an hour, and he was on the move again heading south towards Atlanta. After the passing of 541, we would go get lunch, and pretty much as usual, nothing would move at all for about 2.5 hours. Until this guy popped up. It is now around 3:30 p.m., and all of a sudden this northbound manifest Q580 would pop up on my radio, and we would come here to Iron Belt Road, just about 3 miles north of downtown, to wait on him, and we sat here for about 30 minutes with nothing. And then I remembered something I completely forgot about. Both Q580 and Q581 have to work Junna Yard just north of downtown Cartersville. So this is where that train was, and that is where we went to go watch them switch for a few minutes. And then we heard the engineer say that he was going to roll on up to Iron Belt Road to let the conductor on, and the conductor got in the Rail Crew Express van and came on up to Iron Belt and got out and climbed onto the locomotive. So we would watch them depart and head on to Chattanooga and then to their final destination of Nashville, Tennessee. After Q580 passed, it was our time to head on home, but we'd be back out in about 3 weeks. It is now the morning of May 7th, 2022, and we're set up in downtown Kingston waiting for southbound Autorac's Q203, which is a new train that I'll get into in a few minutes. But we would start out in Marietta and go all the way to Cartersville without seeing or hearing anything. And once we reached Cartersville, someone on Facebook said that our southbound Q203 had passed through South Dalton, so instead of shooting it in Cartersville, I decided to come up here because I haven't been up here to shoot any trains in a little while. Alright, now let's dive into Q203. Q203 used to be, and still is, a southbound Autorac train coming out of Louisville, Kentucky, still terminating in Baldwin, Florida. The old Q203 used to be a straight shot from Louisville to Baldwin via the S&A subdivision. Now he runs out of Louisville going down Chattanooga subdivision through here on the W&A, and once he reaches Atlanta, he'll turn west on the AW&P subdivision, and then make a stop in West Point, Georgia, and then in Montgomery, Alabama, then turn south onto the Bow Line to Waycross, and then turns south again towards Folkston, Callahan, and then on to Baldwin. So basically the old Q203 is the same, just this Q203 makes more stops. Now on to Adairsville, where we knew something else was coming. After about just under an hour of waiting just north of downtown Adairsville, our northbound would show itself coming around the corner at North End Martin Marietta, this northbound being the counterpart of the train that we just saw back in Kingston, Q202, with quite the engine set up today.
North Martin Marietta. Northbound. Same track when I see us up
We weren't able to set up in downtown Adairsville on this past Saturday, as they had their barbecue and blues festival going from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. But I think this shot came out pretty well at this spot. I put my long lens on first to catch him coming up the hill, and as he was down in the valley, I switched to my short lens and got it back onto the tripod just in the nick of time before he showed up. And here's Q202 making a swift run through Adairsville with that nice engine setup, the first locomotive being CSX 7000, which is I believe the first ever rebuild CM44AC, and then the trailing unit 7024 being one of the newer rebuild CM44ACs in the YN3 paint scheme. Once Q202 cleared Adairsville, we would start to head back home, but one more stop at Wyvern Yard for another northbound. Our last train for the day would be this northbound empty ethanol B638, coming out of Tampa's Hooker's Point and going back to Bensenville, Illinois for the Canadian Pacific. This train was either the old K422 or the old K432, but I don't know if it was either of them. This also marks one of the very few times that I've seen a train come through here at track speed, and man, this train was booking it through here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon so you get notified each time I make a new video. And stay tuned for more videos in the future. But until we meet up again next time, this is Georgia Rail Productions saying so long from milepost OOC 418.1.
Forward.